To talk more about the challenges ahead, let's check in with environmental justice advocate Kari Fulton. She's joining us now from Baltimore, and Happy New Year to you, Kari. The situation in Greenland, indication of just how dramatic the climate change issue is. Since 2002, the ice sheet there has lost more than 5 trillion metric tons of ice, according to NASA Sea and Ice research scientists. Can you talk to us about this region, what they're seeing right now?
Well, that's a great question. I think when we're talking about sea level rise in general, I can't necessarily speak specifically around Greenland at this exact moment. When we're talking about level rise, we're also talking about land loss. And so you're looking at places that would normally be tourist destinations that are now into becoming refugee areas. And so that impacts everything around. And then we are also going to talk about how do we utilize our space different? How do we utilize our architecture differently? And then how does that impact not only humans, but also the ecosystem and the native animals and plants of that region?
And the key thing here, I think, that gets lost, Kari, is this action-reaction. You know, we think, oh, Greenland, that's far away. What's happening there is their issue, but it's not. It impacts all of us, doesn't it?
It definitely does. When we think about sea level rise in general, we live on this planet together. So if we're talking about an issue happening with climate change in Greenland, we're going to see it all the way down in some places, even like Mexico, where that temperature and how that impacts our large bodies of water, how that impacts everything surrounding it.
And Kari, I think you'd agree with me. You can rip a headline from each day and point to it. Today, we're witnessing these fires out in Colorado, ferocious in nature. They're dealing with a drought. We've seen a lot of these in recent years in various parts of the globe. We're also seeing these wicked hurricanes and typhoons. Can you talk to us about all of these different weather phenomenons that we're seeing?
What we're seeing are the impacts of what happens when we haven't truly addressed climate change the way that we need to. And not only are we talking about the weather patterns changing, but we're also talking about infrastructure. And if we're really going to prepare ourselves for the future that we see ahead of us, which is more dramatic weather, higher temperatures, changes in how we look at our environment, we have to prepare ourselves. And oftentimes what we find is that governments are moving really slow and they're not preparing for what really is to come. So we have a 10-year window. We call this decade of change. And we're already 2 years into it when we talk about going from 2020 to the goals of 2030. So we really have to move a lot faster, or we're going to see more loss and more apathy to loss, because people are just going to get used to it.
Yeah. Kari, we've got about another minute and a half. I do have to ask you about Glasgow and COP26. Did you see anything there to give you optimism?
Well, I think the biggest thing that gives me optimism is the youth voices, the Youngo, which are the youth NGOs, and what's possible because they're active and they're continuing to grow their voice in those spaces. I also am really excited to see more indigenous-led voices in those spaces. What's going to be important, though, as we move into COP27 in Egypt, is how much we allow space for people to come together, not just in those negotiations, in those hollowed halls, but also in different ways that we can use hybrid engagement. And so that was kind of cool about COP26, is that there were some more opportunities for hybrid engagement, and I hope that continues on.
All right, Kari, we're going to leave it there. Happy New Year to you. Thanks so much for your insights.
Happy New Year.